The Seoul skyline shimmered outside her window, painted in a wash of gold and violet. Inside, the studio was quiet. Warm lights, blooming orchids, and the faint scent of vanilla from her evening tea. Ifeyinwa scrolled through the latest brand concepts on her tablet, head tilted, pencil resting against her lip. Jihoon had been trusting her more, really trusting her. His notoriously brutal board of directors had signed off on every one of her pitches. And next week, she was flying to Tokyo to help lead their first overseas expansion shoot. She was no longer surviving, she was thriving, draped in tailored cream suits and soft silk scarves, fluent enough in Korean to speak up in meetings, always walking with hope by her side, leash loose, head held high. She had become someone even she hadn't fully imagined. Then came the article, The Mystery Black Woman Beside Korea's Coldest CEO, a glossy, full-page piece. Photos of her walking beside Jihoon, their hands nearly brushing, a shot of hope licking her cheek, a still of Jihoon holding the umbrella for her under spring rain. They called it enigmatic, unexpected, unprecedented. At first, she smiled, until the comments rolled in. He's only with her because she's exotic. She must have done something to trap him. Women like her always do. Is this what passes for beauty now? She tried not to read them, but Jihoon's silence didn't help. He didn't say much. Just left his jacket on the back of her chair when he knew she was cold. Stayed later in meetings when she looked overwhelmed. Watched her a little longer than necessary when he thought she wasn't looking. Still, it wasn't enough to drown out the noise. And then it happened. Toby went public. Not with an apology, not with the truth, but with a perfectly polished lie. She wasn't abandoned. She chose to stay. I paid for the room. She knew the relationship was ending. She's just using the story for sympathy now. She stared at her screen in silence. The post had over 900 shares in the first hour. People were commenting under her brand's page, tagging Jihoon, dragging her name through hashtags and group chats. You okay? Jihoon asked quietly from across her apartment that night, as Hope rested in her lap. She didn't answer at first, just stared down at her phone, blinking like the words were static and not sentences. He lied, she whispered, and they believed him. Jihoon stood, walked over, and crouched down in front of her. His hands stayed in his pockets. His jaw was tight. You don't have to explain anything, he said. But I want to, she snapped, looking at him for the first time. Her eyes were glassy. Because I spent months thinking I was crazy for what happened, that I misread everything. And now he gets to flip it? Rewrite it like I'm the one who left? He didn't touch her, not yet. But when she broke, when her voice cracked and she whispered, I loved him, Jihoon. He finally reached out. He took the tablet from her lap, set it aside, and placed his hands on either side of her face. His touch was soft, careful, steady. He doesn't deserve your story, he said, but if you need to scream it, I'll be right here to listen. Her throat tightened. I'm not broken anymore, she whispered, unsure if it was meant for him or herself. No, he said, you're not. You're whole. That's why they're scared of you now. She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Hope nuzzled her ankle, and outside, Seoul glowed, loud, bright, and relentless. But inside her little home, wrapped in the softness of Jihoon's voice, she found something stronger than comfort. She found clarity. The conference room was silent. Only the hum of the city outside and the low shuffle of papers filled the space. Jihoon stood at the head of the long glass table, hands in the pockets of his slate gray suit. His board members sat stiffly around him, each one more polished and more judgmental than the last. It's not about her background, one of them said. though his voice was already laced with discomfort. It's the narrative. The press is twisting it. She's become a distraction. An unpredictable one, another added. And we're in the middle of launching a global campaign. The optics matter. Jihoon's jaw flexed, but he said nothing. He didn't trust his voice to stay steady. Not when all he wanted to say was, "She's the reason your campaign even has heart. She's the reason I come into this room every day and fight to keep building." Instead, he gave a short nod and dismissed the meeting with a cold, "Noted." That evening, his penthouse felt colder than usual. Too many rooms. Too much silence. Too many screens replaying Ifeyinwa's name like a wound that wouldn't close. She'd sent him 3 messages. Nothing urgent. Just her being her. "Hope chewed through your necktie again. Sorry. Did you eat today? Come over. No pressure. Just come home." He hadn't replied. Instead, he stood alone in the shadows of his living room, staring out at Seoul, a city that loved him because it feared him, a city that only respected strength and punished softness. And Ifeyinwa, she was everything they'd never accept. He loved her, but that love made him weak in front of people who were already sharpening their knives. The knock came softly, then again louder. He didn't move until the door creaked open and her voice slipped through like light under a door. "You really weren't going to answer?" He turned slowly. There she was, her braids tied up in a loose bun, Hope trotting in after her like she'd been here 1,000 times. She walked straight past him into the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of water from his fridge, and finally looked at him. "Say it," she whispered. "Say whatever it is you've been holding in your throat." Jihoon's mouth opened, closed, then finally, "You're strong, Ifeyinwa. You've always been strong, but I can't let you burn for me." Her brows furrowed. "Excuse me?" "They're coming for you, for us, and they won't stop. They don't see you the way I do. They never will. And I can't watch them rip you apart in headlines just because I—" His voice faltered. He looked away. "Because you what?" she pressed. "Because I love you." The silence after that was sharp, sacred. She set the bottle down and stepped forward. "Then fight for me," she said, steady and clear. "Or at least, don't push me away under the guise of protection." "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is," her voice cracked. "I didn't survive heartbreak, abandonment, and an entire world of people who told me I didn't belong just to be treated like a weakness now that I'm finally strong." He flinched, but didn't look away. "You're not a weakness," he said quietly. "You're the only thing in my life I'm afraid of losing." She inhaled slowly, stepped closer. "Then hold on tighter, because I'm not going anywhere, Jihoon. But if you let this fear dictate how you love me, you will." And then, finally, he pulled her in, not like a man trying to claim something, but like someone who had been aching for home. She rested her head against his chest, her arms sliding around his waist. Hope circled their feet once, then curled up on the rug. "They'll keep talking," he murmured into her hair. "Let them," she whispered. "They're not living our life. We are." It started with a quiet whimper. Just past midnight, Ifeyinwa stirred on the couch, the flicker of a muted Kdrama still glowing on the screen. Jihoon had fallen asleep beside her, head tilted back, tie loosened, posture finally soft after a long day. Then she heard it again, low, sharp, "Hope." Ifeyinwa sat up fast. "Baby?" she whispered, reaching for her. The small pup lay on the rug, curled in tighter than usual, her little chest rising in uneven bursts. Jihoon woke instantly at the sound of her panic. "What's wrong?" "Something's wrong with Hope," she breathed, scooping the dog into her arms. She's not moving like normal." Hope whimpered again, her eyes dull, her body limp against Ifeyinwa's chest. Jihoon was already on his feet, grabbing his car keys. "Let's go." The emergency vet clinic was quiet except for the ticking clock and Ifeyinwa's anxious pacing. Her hoodie was halfway zipped, her braids hastily tied back, tears clinging to her lashes like they were waiting for permission to fall. Jihoon sat on the plastic bench, hands clasped together, eyes on her. He'd never seen her this undone. Not even after Toby, not even when the headlines got cruel. "She was just playing this morning," Ifeyinwa whispered, arms crossed tight over her chest. "She chased a butterfly. She barked at the mop." He didn't know what to say, so he stood, crossed the room, and opened his arms. She hesitated only a second before walking straight into them. "What if she doesn't make it?" she choked into his chest. "She's our story, Jihoon. She's how we found each other." "She's stronger than she looks," he murmured, "just like someone else I know." The vet returned an hour later with a clipboard and gentle eyes. "We've stabilized her. She likely ate something off the street. Could have been chocolate or a toxin. We'll need to keep her overnight." Ifeyinwa exhaled, her knees nearly giving out. Jihoon caught her by the waist, steadying her. "She's going to be okay," the vet added with a smile. "You got her here in time." That night, they didn't go home. They sat in Jihoon's car in the empty parking lot, soft jazz playing faintly from the speakers, the city lights a distant echo in the dark. She leaned against the window, arms folded. "I keep thinking, maybe if I was paying more attention, she wouldn't have—" "Don't," Jihoon cut in gently. "You didn't fail her. You saved her." Silence. Just the soft hum of the heater, the quiet beat of two people holding their breaths for something they loved. "You love so hard it scares people," Jihoon said at last, voice quiet but clear. "But I think—" He looked at her, eyes soft. "I'm done being scared." She turned to him, stunned. "Jihoon! It used to terrify me, how easily you give your heart. But tonight I watched you fall apart over a 10-pound dog. And I've never wanted to be loved harder in my life." Her lip trembled. Then she reached across and took his hand and whispered, "Then stop watching and let me love you." The sun had barely risen when they brought her home. Hope blinked sleepily from the soft blanket bundled in Ifeyinwa's arms, her little tail giving a weak, slow wag as they stepped through the apartment door. "We're home, baby," Ifeyinwa whispered, pressing her cheek against the top of the pup's head. "You did so good." Jihoon stood beside her, holding the vet's instructions like it was the most important contract of his life. He hadn't slept. There were shadows under his eyes. His collar was still rumpled from the night before, but his gaze never left the tiny creature curled against her. Hope let out a soft whine, and Ifeyinwa immediately kissed her head. "Shh, I know. She moved carefully, kneeling on the floor near the sofa and setting Hope in the little nest they'd built out of folded blankets and one of Jihoon's hoodies, the soft one she always stole. Hope turned in a slow circle, then plopped down with a quiet sigh. That was when it hit. The tears. Sudden. Overwhelming. Ifeyinwa clutched the edge of the couch and started to cry. Really cry, with every bit of fear and panic she hadn't let out at the vet's office. She tried to muffle it, but her breath hitched, and the sound cracked something wide open. Jihoon dropped beside her instantly. "Hey," he said, voice low, reaching for her. "Don't hold it in now." She fell into him, burying her face into his chest as he wrapped his arms around her. His grip was firm, grounding, but gentle. "She could have died," she choked. "And I don't know what I would have done. She's all I have." You have more than her, Jihoon murmured, brushing his lips against her temple. You have me too. You've always had me. She blinked up at him, eyes glassy. But you don't say that. He hesitated. Then, with a breath that sounded like surrender, then let me start now. Hope let out a tiny snore. Soft, rhythmic, safe. Ifeyinwa laughed through her tears, wiping her cheeks. You hear that? She's already back to judging us. She's strong, Jihoon said, just like her mom. He paused, then added, almost shyly, and maybe her dad, too. Ifeyinwa looked at him, stunned for a moment. Then she reached out and grabbed his hand. Okay, dog dad, but if you're going to claim the title, you're doing midnight bathroom duty. Done, he said without hesitation, lips quirking into a rare, sleepy smile. They sat like that on the floor. Two people who had once been strangers, now held together by loyalty, love, and 10 pounds of soft fur. Outside, the sky turned lavender. Inside, the only sound was the soft rise and fall of Hope's breathing and the quiet click of Jihoon's heart, finally starting to open. The idea came quietly, not during a dramatic moment, not after a crisis. It came in a whisper, while she was sitting at a cafe near Han River, sipping jasmine tea, watching a girl on the street struggle to translate directions on her phone. The girl looked barely 20, wide-eyed, alone, familiar. Something tugged inside her chest. Ifeyinwa stood up, walked over, and offered help. In gentle Korean, rough around the edges, but warm. The girl blinked at her in surprise, then relief. You speak Korean? Not well, Ifeyinwa smiled, but well enough to get lost with you. That night, she opened her journal for the first time in weeks. The pages had once been filled with pain, confusion, heartbreak, but now her hand moved differently. What if the next woman like me doesn't have to feel alone? What if she knows where to go, who to call, how to breathe without apologizing for existing? She called it Second Sun, a creative agency, built for women like her, immigrants, dreamers, builders, believers, women who knew what it felt like to be invisible and were done shrinking. By the time Jihoon heard about it, she'd already built a team, a lawyer who'd been denied jobs because of her hijab, a photographer who'd been told she'd never look Korean enough, an artist who only spoke Tagalog but could paint entire stories with a single brushstroke. Ifeyinwa walked into their rented loft space one morning, sunlight spilling across worn hardwood floors, and felt something she hadn't felt since landing in Seoul. Peace, purpose, power. That evening, Jihoon found her still at her desk, surrounded by sketches and strategy boards. You've been working late, he said softly, leaning against the doorframe. She glanced up and grinned, smudged mascara under her eyes, sleeves rolled up, a paint pen tucked behind her ear. So have you, she teased. Who do you think I learned it from? He walked over, slid an arm around her from behind, chin resting lightly on her shoulder. What is all this? It's mine, she said, her voice soft but firm. Finally. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you know, you were never just mine, he said. She turned slightly, raising a brow. You mean you don't own me? I'm just realizing, he said, a smile ghosting over his lips. You were never meant to be anyone's. You were meant to lead. She looked down at the flyer in her hands, one for a workshop called Voice Without Apology. I think I needed to fall apart to realize that, she whispered. And now? She looked back at him, eyes gleaming with tears she wasn't ashamed of anymore. Now I'm writing the story I It was raining. Of course it was. Ifeyinwa hadn't planned to see him again, especially not like this. She had just stepped out of her office building, umbrella in one hand, tote bag in the other, when she heard the voice. Ifeyinwa! She turned, slowly. There he was. Toby. Suit wrinkled. Eyes tired. Hair slightly damp from the rain. Like he'd been standing there for hours trying to gather the courage. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice calm, firm. He stepped closer. "I've been trying to reach you." "I know. I've been ignoring you on purpose." He swallowed hard. "I don't want to cause trouble. I just... Can I talk to you? 5 minutes? That's all." She studied him for a long, quiet moment. Then she exhaled. 5. They ended up at the rooftop cafe. The city moved around them, busy and bright and uncaring. "I saw the article," he began. "The company. You. Jahoon. All of it." "Good for you," she said softly. The rooftop cafe was quiet, perched above the city's endless hum. Afternoon light washed across the skyline, but between them, the air was cold. Toby sat across from her, eyes tired, suit wrinkled like he hadn't slept in days. He looked down, then back at her. "I never thought you'd actually agree to meet," he said quietly. Ifeyinwa sipped her tea, her gaze steady. "I didn't," she replied. "I agreed to speak. That's different." Toby leaned forward, elbows on the table, searching her face. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen the way it did," he said. "The posts, the comments, the backlash." "You abandoned me in a foreign country," she cut in, her voice sharp but calm. "You blocked my number. You drained my savings. And then you rewrote the story to make yourself the victim." She paused, tilting her head. "What exactly weren't you planning, Toby?" He swallowed hard, visibly shaken. She leaned back, folding her arms. "Because to me," she continued, "it looked very planned." His voice cracked when he finally spoke again. "I didn't think you'd make it without me." Silence. That landed. Hard. "I thought you'd go back to London," he said, softer now. "I thought you'd fall apart. And when you didn't, when you started shining, I realized I was the one who couldn't handle it." "No," she said, quietly furious. "You didn't realize. You knew." Her eyes burned, not with tears, but with truth. "That's why you left. You saw it in me. You just didn't want to be there when I became someone you couldn't keep up with." "I hated how much I needed you," he admitted. "Every time you gave, I felt smaller." "I gave because I loved you," she said, her voice trembling but firm, "and you punished me for it." "I was scared," he whispered. "Well, so was I, Toby." She held her chest with the one hand, like she needed to steady it. "But I didn't run. I built something out of nothing. I healed. I stayed soft when the world wanted me bitter. You were scared of being seen as weak. I was scared of never being seen at all." Toby looked at her then, really looked, broken, small. "I'm sorry," he said. She stared down at her teacup. "I know you are, but I'm not the girl on the couch anymore, the one covering rent, cooking noodles, waiting for you to get it together." Her eyes lifted, calm and clear. "I'm the woman you couldn't stand to see win without you. And you were right, Toby. I didn't need you to make it out of Seoul. I needed you to leave so I could." She stood. Her final words came soft and sharp, like silk over steel. "I hope you heal, but not near me." "You look happy," he added, almost reverently. "You look like someone who's loved right." "I am," Ifeyinwa said confidently. "Do you forgive me?" he asked. She tilted her head. "I forgive myself. That's all I needed." And with that, she stood up and walked away, turned and walked away. into the rain, into her life, into her power. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind that tasted like warm tea and slow music, like linen sheets and the soft thump of hope's paws on hardwood. The city moved gently outside the windows, but inside, everything was still. Sacred. Ifeyinwa stood in the kitchen wearing one of Jihoon's old t-shirts, flipping pancakes as Hope stared at her from her dog bed like a tiny supervisor. "You've already eaten," she said, laughing. "You're not getting more just because you look cute." Jihoon leaned against the doorframe, watching her, heart too full to speak. The light hit her skin like it knew her name. She turned and paused. He was holding something in his palm, small, gold, delicate. She blinked. "What's that?" He walked forward, slow and certain, and set it on the kitchen counter between them. A key, simple, elegant, warm like it had already been held 1,000 times. "To the place I built for us," he said softly. She stared at it. "It's not a castle, no butlers, no elevator that sings when you walk in." He paused, his voice steady but low. "But it's ours. Every detail, every wall, every choice. I made it thinking of you, of Hope, of us." Hope wagged her tail like she understood the assignment. Ifeyinwa's breath hitched. "Jihoon." "You can walk away," he added, his eyes not leaving hers. "I'll still love you. You don't owe me anything. Not your yes, not your presence. Just know that if you choose this, I'll spend every day making sure it feels like home." She picked up the key slowly, her fingers trembling. It was warm, solid, real. She looked at him, then at Hope, then back at him. And suddenly, all the noise in her life, the heartbreak, the headlines, the fear, fell away. "Home sounds perfect," she whispered, smiling through tears. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her neck, holding her like she was everything he'd never dared to ask for. Hope barked once, tail wagging like she was giving her blessing. "You sure this place allows dogs?" Ifeyinwa teased, her voice muffled against his chest. "She came with the key," Jihoon murmured, smiling. And that morning, in a small kitchen that smelled like cinnamon and safety, they said yes, without needing a ring, a kneel, or an audience. Just love, just presence, just home. The invitation came like a command. Dinner, Sunday, 7 p.m. Don't be late. Jihoon showed it to her like he was handing her a bomb. Ifeyinwa just raised a brow. "Your mother always this warm?" "She's not usually this generous," he muttered. "I've never brought anyone home before." "Oh." "She thinks no one's ever good enough." "Oh," she said again, then smiled. "She's going to love me." Jihoon's mother was the embodiment of grace wrapped in steel. Black silk hanbok, diamond studs, lips like a line drawn with a ruler. The kind of woman who could ruin a man's entire career with a glance. She barely acknowledged Ifeyinwa as she entered. "You're late," she said, though the clock read 6:59. "Right on time," Ifeyinwa replied gently. "But I understand punctuality matters more when people assume you have something to prove." Jihoon almost choked on his water. His mother raised a single brow. "You speak well." "I do everything well," Ifeyinwa said with a calm smile, especially under scrutiny. A pause. Then, "I see." They sat. They ate. And every forkful felt like it might come with a test. Jihoon's mother asked pointed questions about Ifeyinwa's background, education, citizenship, intentions. "You're building a company?" she asked, like the idea didn't fully register. "Yes, for immigrant women, so they don't have to rely on charity or pity to be seen, so they can stand." "Interesting," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. And what do you bring into his world? Ifeyinwa met her gaze directly. Stability, peace, fire when it's needed, and the kind of love that doesn't beg to be proven. Jihoon's chopsticks froze midair. His mother said nothing. Not then. After dinner, Jihoon stood at the door with his mother. She glanced back at Ifeyinwa, who was wiping Hope's tiny paws by the mat. "She's not what I expected," she said softly. "I know. She's stronger than she looks." "She's the strongest person I've ever met," Jihoon said. His mother looked at her son, something unreadable flickering in her expression. "Good. You'll need someone like her." "Wait," Jihoon blinked. "You approve?" "I didn't say that," she replied crisply, then added with a hint of amusement, "But I do like her." "You just gave her the verbal version of a handshake," Jihoon muttered. "I'm going to give her much more," she said, smiling. Weeks later, Jihoon's mother invited Ifeyinwa to tea. No press, no expectations, just porcelain cups and mooncakes. "I wasn't fair to you at first," she said, pouring the tea carefully. "I didn't need fair. I needed real. You remind me of my younger self, before I traded softness for strategy." A pause. "Don't trade yours," she said, more gently. "The world needs women who lead with fire and grace." Ifeyinwa smiled. "I think we just became friends." "Not friends," Jihoon's mother replied. "Then what?" She looked her in the eyes. "Family." They didn't want a ballroom. They wanted light. So they chose a rooftop garden overlooking the Han River, filled with magnolias, pale roses, and soft lavender mist. The city sparkled behind them, but all the chaos felt miles away. There were only 30 guests, just the people who knew their story, not just their names. Chairs curved in a crescent around a floral arch wrapped in soft gold cloth, whispering with the wind. Hope trotted down the aisle first, wearing a delicate flower crown and tiny satin paws. The crowd melted. "She's the real star," Ifeyinwa whispered to Jihoon before the ceremony. "I just paid for the flowers," he deadpanned. Ifeyinwa's dress wasn't white. It was gold, soft, liquid gold that shimmered with every breath she took. Braids woven into an elegant crown, gold cuffs on her wrists. A queen who walked through fire and made it fashion. Jihoon waited at the altar in a deep charcoal suit with a gold-threaded pocket square. His breath caught halfway in his chest as she walked toward him. Not floating, walking. Like she chose this. Like she owned this. Hope sat between them at the altar, tail thumping softly. No efficient. Just them. Their words, their truth. "You loved me before I believed I was worth loving," Jihoon said. "You stood by me before I knew how to stay still. You gave me softness when all I offered was silence. And now, I give you every version of myself. Loud, quiet, afraid, strong. Because if love is a home, you are the key." Ifeyinwa, with tears running down her cheeks, said, "I didn't survive for love. I survived for me. But loving you, that's been my joy. You never rescued me. You stood beside me while I rescued myself. And now, I choose you. Every day, every quiet morning, every thunderstorm. I choose you, Jihoon, and Hope too, obviously." Hope barked once. Right on cue, laughter broke out. So did tears. They didn't dance a traditional first dance. They slow danced barefoot under fairy lights, while Hope sat curled up between their feet, leash tied gently to Jihoon's wrist. When the song ended, Jihoon whispered something into Ifeyinwa's ear. She burst out laughing. "What did he say?" someone asked. "He said," she called out, wiping tears, "we're adopting another dog." Hope barked again, probably in protest. They stood on the edge of the rooftop, arms around each other, city lights shimmering below. Hope pressed between them. No audience, no noise, just the woman who rewrote her own ending, the man who finally let softness in, and the dog who carried their hearts through it all. "You happy?" he asked, whispering against her temple. "So much it hurts," she smiled, "but the good kind." And together, they walked back inside. Home. The new house was quiet. Too quiet. After weeks of wedding chaos, flower deliveries, guest list drama, and Hope trying to eat her floral collar every 5 seconds, the silence was weird. Peaceful, but weird. Ifeyinwa stood in the doorway of the bedroom, barefoot, hair loose, wrapped in one of Jihoon's oversized t-shirts, the one with the little tear near the collar she refused to let him throw away. Jihoon came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his lips brushing the side of her neck. "Still want to back out?" he teased softly. She snorted. "After you married me, gave me a new house, and let our dog wear a flower crown at the ceremony, please, I'm locked in." They stepped into the bedroom. Warm cream sheets, soft amber lighting, scented candles flickering low. Romantic, dreamy, until they both stopped and stared at the bed, at Hope, sprawled dead center, legs stretched in every direction, completely unconscious and snoring like she paid the mortgage. "No," Jihoon said flatly. "Absolutely not." "You said she comes with the key," Ifeyinwa reminded him, barely holding back laughter. "That was before I knew she'd take the entire bed. Is this dog even small anymore? She's expanded." Hope opened one eye, blinked, flopped over dramatically like a diva on set. "She thinks this is her honeymoon," Ifeyinwa whispered. "It's our honeymoon," Jihoon growled, walking to the side of the bed. "Hope! Office! Come on, girl." She yawned in his face. "She's mocking you," Ifeyinwa said, climbing in from the other side. Jihoon sat on the edge and gave her the most serious look he'd ever worn. "I am a CEO. I've negotiated $1 billion mergers. I've taken down hostile investors. I will not lose this bed to a 12-pound cotton ball." Ifeyinwa blinked innocently. "Then take her off." Jihoon reached out. Hope growled. "She's bluffing." Hope snarled. He slowly pulled his hand back. "I think she wants to fight me." Ifeyinwa was howling now, literally doubled over in laughter. She kissed Jihoon's cheek, then flopped down beside Hope, spooning her like a toddler. "You lose." "Unbelievable," Jihoon muttered, pulling off his shirt with dramatic flair and collapsing on the tiny corner of the bed left for him. "There's always the couch," she teased, eyes sparkling. "This is my house. It's Hope's now." Hope let out one satisfied sigh and sprawled deeper into the center of the bed like a royal. Hours later, Jihoon woke up with his face smushed into Hope's fur, one arm draped over Ifeyinwa's waist. He looked at both of them, sighed, and whispered, "I married